Hello again. And after last week's Schools and Agents Bulletin, where Lynn spoke to you about the importance of search engine optimization, or SEO as we call it, so that you can organically drive traffic to your website, today, I'm going to turn the spotlight again onto one of my favorite topics, which is email marketing. Why is email marketing one of my favorite topics? There are various reasons, but the main ones are that, first of all, email marketing is very cheap. It is a very cheap form of marketing, so you can stay in touch with your target audience, you can stay in touch with your students, you can stay in touch with your agents, you can stay in touch with people within your industry for a relatively cheap price. And statistically proven, email marketing is one of the main elements that supports customer retention. So it is one of the main tools that businesses use in order to keep customers engaged. And that is why I like it a lot. So today I'm going to focus a little bit on what you need to take into consideration when you are creating an email marketing campaign. And one of the places I always start is to know your audience. Know whether you are sending an email to a group of students, whether you are sending an email to a group of agents. Obviously, remember guys, that the things that you want to tell students are not always the same things that you want to tell agents. So crafting an email campaign and just sending it to everybody in your list, in your email list, does not really make sense. So the best place to start is to, first of all, segment your audience. So divide your audience into different groups and then craft email messages for those specific groups. So if, like I said, if you want to send an email that is a special offer for students, then you just need to send it to one audience, to one group. And obviously even the language that you use is totally different when you're speaking to students and when you are speaking to other people in the industry. Very often it also makes a difference, and you also need to diversify your language, whether you're speaking to students who are adults and whether you are, for example, speaking to juniors or their parents. So the tone of voice, the kinds of messages, the kinds of topics that you include in your email should vary depending on who you are sending this email to. So building a clean and segmented email list and then crafting your messages accordingly is definitely key to a successful email marketing campaign. The next thing, and this is something that is very often overlooked, it's subject lines. Sometimes even when it comes to just sending a regular email, subject lines tend to be overlooked, and they play a very important role in the decision of whether the person is actually going to click on the email and open it, or whether they are just going to say, this is an email newsletter, delete. So even your subject line sometimes needs to change according to the topic of the email. And having a subject line which is in capital letters or a subject line with a lot of exclamation marks, that tends to reflect badly on your email, and very often email software tends to classify that specific email as spam. Now keep in mind that when you are using an email software to send out your newsletters, it is already much better than sending out bulk emails straight from your inbox. So point number one, it is much better to use an email software such as Constant Contact or MailChimp, or there are loads of them, because that immediately helps the email software on the recipient's end to classify your email as obviously something that is not spam. But then after you do that, the next thing that you have to focus on is, as I was saying, the subject line. So make sure that your subject line reflects what the email is about. So if you are sending an email to recap what summer at your school has been like, then state that in your subject line and try to make it engaging, or try to have a subject line that is a question. Very often when the subject line is a question, it tends to lead to more opens. So experiment a little bit with subject lines and don't just choose one and stick to that. Obviously, these are all tips, but the most important thing that you can do is to create content that is valuable, and more importantly, content that is relevant. If the content in your email, week after week or month after month, however often you send your emails, is not relevant, then you will start seeing the number of people who are unsubscribing increasing. On the contrary, if the content of your email is relevant, if the content of your email is valuable, if the content of your email is informative, then the number of people who actually subscribe to your email newsletter is going to increase. So another thing to keep in mind is the content itself, because ultimately it is the main thing. It is the reason why you are sending an email in the first place. One other important thing to keep in mind, remember that nowadays people, the majority of the people don't constantly or don't use a laptop computer, a desktop computer as often as they did. The majority of the people read newsletters and check their emails on their phone while they are commuting from work to home, or from school to home, from university to home. So make sure that the email that you send is sent using a software that optimizes emails for mobile phone usage. Otherwise, your email is going to look completely scattered on the screen when accessed through a phone, and that is not very pleasant, very pleasing to the eye. And very often when an email is not optimized for mobile phone usage, it tends to get deleted much quicker than emails which are optimized. So that is another thing. Final 2 points, and again this is something that I always insist on, and over here I am referring to personalization. It is very important, again, when you are using email software like MailChimp, like Constant Contact. I mentioned these two because these are the two that I am mainly familiar with, but there are loads and they are just as good. They give you the possibility, when you are entering contacts into your email list, to, yes, add the email address, but then to also include the first name, the second name, sometimes the role within the company, so you can include different layers of information. When you are designing the email itself, you can select how to address the person, how to address the recipient on the other end. Personalization is key, so that is very important. And like I said, to link it up with what I said at the beginning, with the content of the email itself, again, if you are sending an email to students, so apart from the fact that personalization is important and addressing them by the first name or by Mr. or Miss or whatever, that is entirely up to you. Obviously keep in mind that nowadays the level of formality has decreased, so whereas before it was advised to address people as Mr. or Ms. or Mrs. or whatever, nowadays, especially when it comes to email communication, people tend to go for first name basis. So that is a small bracket over there. But to add to personalization, it's not just the way you address the person that's important, but it's also the content of the email itself. So, like I said before, if the email is going to be sent out to agents, then you need to make sure that the content of the email is relevant to agents. Otherwise, it is not going to feel personalized. And finally, and I conclude with this, a CTA, a call to action. Never ever send out an email without a final call to action. What do you want the recipient to do? Do you want the recipient to contact you today? Do you want the recipient to click here? Then give him or her a button and tell them what to do. It's only by telling them what to do and only by giving them a call to action that you can actually measure the success of your email campaign. So with that, I'm going to leave you today after this short video on email software, on email communication and on email shots. One thing I wish to add is that if you've always wanted to start email campaigns and you've never really felt comfortable doing it, or you never really got the hang of it, get in touch with us, drop us a line. I'll set up a call with you and we'll see how best we can help you set up your email marketing campaigns. So I'll leave you with that, and anything you need when it comes to email campaigns, please do get in touch with us on the various channels where you are going to see this video on. Have a lovely weekend, and I'll see you again with more tips next week.